warmly welcome to Awesound TV. It's really great having you with us this week. I'm really proud to have a real rock singer and rock vocal coach this week, Kevin Richards from New York City, from Rock the Stage. Warmly welcome, Kevin. So good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's great. It's amazing these Thursdays having like vocal coaches and singers, and really having some great information about how we can take the next step as a singer and just improve our voices so we can last for that whole gig, or just take that step to start to sing more and really become better as a singer. And I thought we would spend some time on I promised on Facebook that we would talk about how one can learn to sing as Bruce Dickinson, as we have you here. So
his voice.
Yeah, maybe we can start with that question.
Easiest way, yeah. Well, Bruce is somewhat of a, I wouldn't say a rare individual, but he's a less common kind of male voice. You know, Bruce, when he talks, is kind of up here. It's kind of a high male voice. It's kind of up there. It's very bright. It's very up like this. So he's kind of a high chest belter. He belts very high in his chest voice. It's kind of a mix with lower head. He's not in pure head, but it's very. I mean, he can belt pretty much up to like an E above high C. So that's pretty high. I mean, that's pretty rare for most male vocalists to be able to do that. He's gotten better at it over the years. I was fortunate enough to be able to see Bruce on his very first tour with Iron Maiden in '82. And he was just phenomenal on that tour. But, you know, they were only playing for an hour, you know, and so he could really let it out, and he was just really had something to prove. But, you know, and then over the years he's gotten kind of better at singing the Maiden material live, because, you know, they do a 2.5 hour show, and it's for 2 years on the road. You know, he's got to learn how to save his voice. So he's kind of figured out how to do those high chesty belts in I'd say a safer way and a bit less taxing way. Because on that very first record, you know, he was just trying to sound like that whole Number of the Beast album. So he was just letting it go, and I never heard him sound like that ever again, because after that they just started doing all their headlining tours. But to sing like Bruce, basically you just have to learn how to keep a lot of your lower head voice kind of in your mouth. That's basically what he does. And you'll see sometimes when he goes to sing some of those higher notes, you'll actually see him prep his jaw and his mouth before he sings. He actually goes, and then he belts. And, you know, Bruce is one, he's a guy, he jumps around, he runs all over the stage. But you'll notice when he does his high belts like that, he stops and plants himself. And it's a stage technique called stand and deliver. And that's basically, I got to do something, you know, where I really have to kind of focus and get my body involved in it. He'll plant himself, do the high thing, and then boop, he's off again. He's off and running and all of that kind of stuff. So he knows how to kind of, you know, just focus for the one thing he needs to do. You know, you'll notice when he does all the harder vocals, he kind of just stands in one place. And then he does all this running around and stuff in between all those other things. He's really good at that. A lot of singers don't get that kind of stage technique of when you're doing something really technical or really difficult physically, to plant yourself. Don't try to do it while you're trying to move around the stage. It's too much energy, you know. Bruce has been doing, you know, Bruce is, you know, in his late 50s now. He's 56, 57, so, you know, he's got to take it easy, even though he's really good physical shape.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. And for all those who don't know how he sings, can you give some examples, or how I as a singer can?
Well, Bruce is, like I said, he's it's knowing how to get a really good connection in your lower head voice, and then being able to really not back away from that as you go up higher. I really don't have a kind of reference here to do it, but see, like if I do something high, let's see. Let me back the mic off you so I don't blow you out. Let's see. The children of the damned, children of the damned, and that the high note there is kind of right on the right on the roof of my mouth. I'm not letting it go into the back of my sinus cavity, which is really pure head voice, with children of the damned, which is more of a heady sound. That's kind of more of how Rob Halford would do it. His high D's and high E's are, yeah, that kind of stuff. They're really heady, really pharyngally, whereas Bruce is more of a, yeah! He brings it into his mouth more because he's a higher voice. Even though Rob is kind of a high baritone, his voice isn't as high. Speaking voice isn't as high as Bruce. Bruce is a really high. It's up here when he talks. Hey, no, it's very high, very Monty Python, upper British kind of sound. Whereas Rob's a bit more here. He talks kind of there. It's more of a baritone sound, whereas Bruce is more of a high tenor, a low tenor, I should say.
So is that what you would call like a hard mix? Like someone?
Yeah, it's a really hard mix. It's a heavy mix. It's a heavy upper mix.
Yeah.
Past his high C into a D and all that. Run to the hills, run for your life. That kind of stuff.
That's amazing.
That's tough to do, and for me, I'm a low baritone, so that's really pushing it to get up that high. I'm not doing that full bore, so it's just knowing how to keep some of the sound in your mouth and not letting it go purely up into the head cavity.
Yep.
Which is the. Sorry, keep talking. Once you get me started, I'll keep rolling. Sorry.
That's great, so good. So how would I? Because I have a pretty light mix. Like, how would I practice to get more of that hard mix in there? Like,
you have to do a lot of dampening, a lot of larynx dampening.
Yeah.
Which is doing things like w and using consonants like W, G, and L.
Yeah.
Where you get a lot of and go. There's a lot of, because basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to expand your resonant space or the mix vertically this way instead of horizontally, like a lot of guys will smile into it, and that just spreads the sound that way. What you're trying to do is actually lengthen it vertically, so it kind of stays in the mouth. It stays this way. So it's so it's a lot of go with a lot of really low larynx. And that it's hard to do because it takes a lot of breath support to keep it all together.
Because it's so easy that the larynx rises when I'm pulling up.
So practicing it with the lower larynx helps kind of keep the resonance in more down, a bit lower down towards the tongue rather than going up into the sinus cavity behind the eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
Less of a masky sound, as they say, mask.
And it seems like you have a pretty hard pressure on there as well, because when I do a light mix, I don't need so much pressure. I can be pretty relaxed, but it seems...
Yeah, like a light connected mix, something like what you would see from like a speech level type of thing. No! There's not a lot of pressure there. So the resonance is allowed to go up into the back of the sinus cavity. So it's a light mix. It's a light upper mix. It's just a lot less pressure on the vocal cords. When I do I'm gripping more of the vocal cord together. Yeah. So it's thicker as it goes up. I can't be too thick. It's a fine line between getting that thickness and being too heavy. Otherwise you strain and it's and you can't really get any air through it. It takes a while to kind of get that kind of thing. For someone who doesn't have, the Bruce Dickinson voice. Yeah, for sure. Guys like me with lower voices, it takes a good amount of, a few years to kind of get that kind of high belty sound like that.
Yeah.
A lot of really good breath support training.
And how does Bruce Dickinson manage to last like a whole gig, like for 2 hours doing that?
He's in really good physical shape.
Yeah.
He's kind of a health guy. He's been into fencing for a really long time. So
what's that?
Fencing, competitive fencing. The guys with the swords and whatever. Yeah, with the masks and that whole bit. He's into all of that. He's been into that since the '80s. So it keeps him very toned and very in shape. And I'm sure he runs and stuff to keep himself in shape. Plus, now that he's a pilot and he flies basically the tour plane that they all ride on, He's got to go to bed early. He's got to get up. He's got to go to bed early. He's got to get up early. He's got to be completely sober and awake. So he has to be a lot more conscious of his health because he's flying the plane. So he can't be out partying. He can't be drinking. He's got to fly the plane. So he's a cleaner body. He's got to drink a lot of water, and he's got to be awake. He's got to get a lot of sleep. So that actually aids you in having a better voice from day to day, getting good sleep and drinking a lot of water and stuff like that, and being in really good physical health.
Isn't that like most singers or vocal coaches, they take care of their, like, when they really want to be in that, like, treat their body as they're an athlete, they really take care of them?
Yeah, it's your instrument. It's your instrument. So, you got to figure, how would you treat your guitar if you had to carry it around with you all day long?
Yeah.
Without a case. If you just had to carry your guitar on your shoulder all day, how would you take care of it? You would make sure that thing didn't get wet, it stayed out of the cold, it didn't get too hot. You're basically, your voice is your instrument. So you have to think of it in that terms. You have to kind of take care of it and keep it well hydrated, keep it, as I say, the water is basically the oil for the machine. It keeps it well lubricated and running properly. So you got to drink a lot of water or juice like I have. And again, you try to get as much sleep as you can. I know that's difficult. We're not all 10 with no responsibilities. We have lives and jobs and things. So try to get as much sleep as you can. If you can take little naps and rests and things like that here and there during the day, that's great. Best thing for me, if I'm not gigging, if I'm not actively gigging every week, I can kind of slack off a little bit. I can. I can have a drink or two and things like that, but I just know if I have rehearsals, if I got a gig coming up, I have to stop all of that and start drinking all my water and make sure I'm warming up every day and stretching out and singing and stuff like that. So I'm prepared for the gig. Yeah. It's just, just basic maintenance, what you do on a car, if you own a car. Yeah. You keep it running.
Kevin, thank you so much. I also want to ask you, like, how do one practice getting into whistle voice without, like, squeezing together? I think that's a problem.
That's a question I can't answer for you because I can't do whistle tone. Oh. I cannot do it. I think because my voice is too heavy, it's too thick, it's too low. I can get up to a soprano high C, a C6, but it doesn't sound like whistle tone. Like you'd hear like a speech level person like, say like Brett Manny or John Henney or something like that. One of those guys do it. It's like, it actually sounds like a whistle. Oh. Mine actually sounds just like really high head voice.
But do you have like, do you find two breaks in your registers? So like the third, do you have a third register up there? Because my first break is pretty easy to get across, but my second break is like, it's harder to get through those registers.
Well, so I don't like to use the word break, because it's I know it's a common word or stuff like that. I try not to do that. My terminology is resonance shift or resonance blend. Yeah. Your first resonance blend is from the throat to the mouth. That's the one where a lot of guys have the trouble, like the middle C to the G above, at first break. Yeah. As you guys like to say it, first blend. The second blend is like from the A above middle C to like the high C. That's your second resonance shift. The third one occurs around the F or so, the F sharp, kind of basically an octave above where the first one happens. Yeah. Is that third one up into superhead. I don't have a break or a problem there or a real weird resonance shift. Once I kind of get to the D or the E above high C, basically my resonance doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of stays there and the vocal cords just stretch. So it's a weird, it doesn't go into that third weird blend into whistle. It just won't do it. I've tried for many years. It just doesn't happen.
Lucky you that you don't have the break there. That sounds nice.
I don't. Like I said, my high notes are more of a Rob Halford sound. Yeah. Very pharyngeal, very heady. They're not a whistly type of sound. Even though he can do like a really high whistly type of thing when he wants. And even David Lee Roth could do it when he used to do his wow kind of thing. That was kind of a whistle. That was like an F sharp 5 or an F5. Yeah. Kind of whistle thing that he did, but that was more like a vocal fry type of thing, and I really can't do vocal fry really high.
I also want to ask you, like, how do you combine we talked about this a little bit, how do you combine the rock and roll life with taking care of your voice? And we talked about this a little bit.
Well, I was never a guy that was into the rock and roll lifestyle. I was never that guy. You know, I don't have any tattoos. There's no ear piercings, none of that. I was never into that. I was into the music, you know, starting as a kid, starting when I was about 11 or so, when I started playing drums. And when I got into that, like those teenage years where you start to do that kind of stuff and smoke and drink and all that, I never really had friends who did that kind of stuff, so I never really was around it. And I was also around 15 or 16, I got into martial arts. So martial arts training. So the whole thing was, you know, clean body, clean mind, and you don't do drugs, you don't drink alcohol, you don't smoke. So I never really got into it. So I never really lived the rock and roll lifestyle. You know, I was never homeless. I don't have tattoos. I like my parents. You know, that kind of stuff, you know. So I never really got into that lifestyle. So it's very easy for me to kind of maintain my voice in that way. Kind of boring in that regard. You know, it's never really, you know. But I mean, no, you know, there are guys out there that do that, man, and they get up there and they sing and they sound great, and I don't, you know, but guys like that, you have a short shelf life. You know, that kind of lifestyle doesn't last very long. In terms of a singer, it doesn't last very long. But you'll see guys like Chris Cornell or Steven Tyler, you know, after about 10 years of doing that kind of lifestyle and trying to sing, they start to lose their voices. It starts to go on you because your body can only take so much wear and tear. And, you know, your voice is a very small, delicate little, you know, your larynx is a very small, delicate little thing with little muscles and little fibers and stuff. It can only take so much abuse. So, you know, lots of hard alcohol and drying out and smoking and drugs and everything else, and it wears it out a lot quicker. And they've had to kind of clean up a bit to kind of get their voices back. As Steven Tyler's basically had to clean up his act, and Chris Cornell had to go into rehab and all that kind of stuff to kind of get their voices back because their careers are just over.
Yeah.
And that's why guys like, you know, Rob Halford and Bruce Dickinson still sound great, especially Bruce, you know, at being in his late 50s. Even David Lee Roth, you know, who's almost 60, you know, actually had to get his voice back in shape to be back in Van Halen, you know, and he sounds a lot better now than he did even just 20 years ago.
So what would what's your 5 best tips for those to find themselves in that circumstance and they want to be able to be a singer for a long time? How would they?
Okay,
what would they do?
1, train.
Yeah.
Either, you know, train at home, make sure you vocalize every day, even if it's just 10 minutes. 10 minutes is better than no minutes. So train.
So that's
warm up.
Voice training.
Voice training, scales, anything. Even if it's just for 10 minutes a day in the shower, do something to keep your voice stretched and flexible. Stay hydrated. Make sure you drink plenty of water. Even if it's, you know, beer, water. Make sure there's some water in there somewhere. Keep yourself hydrated. That's 2. Make sure you warm up before the show. 3, make sure you warm down after the show. That's one a lot of singers miss, warming down after the show. They get off the show and they just hit the bar. You got to take 10 minutes and bring the voice back down. 5, get a good amount of sleep. And stay in relative shape. You know, I mean, don't, you know, eat yourself into oblivion. You know, because the bigger you get, the more pressure there is on your lungs and on your diaphragm, and it's actually harder to breathe.
Do you ever have like problems with acid reflux, or students who have problems with that?
No, I have a very bland diet. I'm kind of a guy who's very bland. I'm a very bored eater, very bored drinker. So I do have some students, and I've had some Skype students have that problem. They have a problem with acid reflux and stuff like that, and it's basically just down to diet.
Yeah.
Before you have to sing, even if it's just rehearsal with your band or whatever, make sure that particular day you kind of stay away from anything acidic like orange juices, grapefruit juices, and anything that might give you acid reflux. Stick to a very bland diet. Just have like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you know, something, you know, some cold cuts or something with some bread, just something that will just soak up some acid in your bread and fiber, bran, things like that, bread. Really good to soak up the acid in your stomach so it doesn't kind of bubble up. You know, because what happens is, you know, the acid reflux is from the diaphragm being pressed down and squishing all your lower organs down onto the stomach, and that produces the influx up into the body up here. So not having a lot of acid in your system to begin with will help with the reflux happening while you're trying to sing. So stick to a bland diet that particular day.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had quite some problems with that before, but then I totally changed my diet and I cut out like wheat and dairy, and that like took away 90% of the problem.
Yeah.
Like I think it's different for everyone, but that just helped me so.
Well, the dairy is also good because dairy makes you very phlegmy. It makes you very that kind of thing, and that can aid in actually just churning up the dairy in your stomach and actually just churn up the acid. You know, like I said, just stick to like water and very bland things just for that particular day. You know, you don't have to live like that. You know, but when you kind of have to go into the kind of singer's mode for rehearsal for a show, just kind of, you know, chill out your diet for that particular day just to kind of calm it down.
Cool, thank you so much. I also want to ask you, like, if a singer finds themselves like they run out quickly, like they sing for an hour and then they just don't have any voice, so they're just really, really tight in their voice. What do they do? Do they sing too loud, or how do they? Well,
that's usually it's usually if someone tires, their breath support isn't doing most of the work, because your larynx up here, and you know, you figure your see if I can get it in here. You know, your vocal cords are only about that big, about the size of your thumbnail. So you know, they're about an inch long. So it's very small ligaments and musculature. You know, I figure the muscles around that are even smaller. You know, they're not really used to doing, they're not made to do a lot of heavy lifting. If someone tires, they're basically not using enough breath support. Their body isn't doing the bulk of the work. Up here should be very, very little work, and it should basically just be the vessel to resonate the sound that's being created by the body, really. I mean, I can sing for 4 hours and not tire, you know. I can do, you know, 3-hour shows and not tire, 3 sets of an hour, or each an hour, and not tire. That's because the bulk of my singing is coming from my body, which is bigger musculature, it's bigger thing. That can take a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of constant muscle movement. Up here is really just, I give my students this particular analogy, and that is basically think of a guitar half stack, you know, with an amp head on top and a speaker on the bottom. Switch that around, where the speaker's on the top and the amp head is on the bottom. That's basically your body. This is your guitar head. This is your power head. This is where all the power comes from.
Yep.
Up here is basically just the speaker.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to do all of your power from up here, you're going to tire really quick. I used to be that way. 40 minutes and I was toast. I was done. When I didn't know what I was doing. I could only sing for about 45 minutes, and that was done. But once I learned a proper breath support and to be as relaxed and as open up here as possible, my stamina just grew and grew and grew. And now I can just sing for hours on end, and it doesn't bother me.
So, Kevin, do you have what's your 3 tips to actually, if someone has that problem and they want to just be able to sing longer and practice breath support? And relax?
Yeah, sure. 1, start practicing some breath support techniques, and I have some of those on my YouTube channel. If people want to check that out, breath support stuff, some breath, you know, learning how to kind of hold longer breath for a longer period of time. That's 1. 2, make sure that you're not singing with a lot of tension up here. This should basically feel relaxed and open. When I'm singing, most of the time, I almost don't feel anything up here at all, except the vibration of sound going through my mouth. Yeah. There's no tension in my neck. Third tip is basically try to sing for longer periods of time. You know, the only way you can get stamina to be able to sing for longer periods of time is actually just to try to sing for longer. If all you're ever singing is 45 minutes, you know, let's say your band is only an opening for, you know, people and whatever, and you're only singing for doing opening slots for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and all of a sudden you get a headline show and you got to do an hour and a half, You've never sung for an hour and a half, so you have to be able to. You have to just basically start practicing singing longer and longer and longer. It's you know, how does anyone go from, you know, running 1 mile to 3 miles? Sooner or later, he's got to start running 3 miles. He may not make it, but you have to try. And sooner or later, that 3 miles becomes easier, and then you can run for 5 miles, and it's basically just building stamina in the body. And the only way you can do that is by actually just trying to sing for longer. But make sure there's no tension and you're using a lot of breath support.
Cool, thank you so much. And I also want to ask you, like, how often does a singer have to practice to see results, to reach their goals, and to become
every day?
Like, yeah.
Yep, every day. It doesn't have to be for long. You know, there are guys out there practice an hour every day. You know, we're not all, you know, teenagers with not much to do. You know, as we get into adulthood, and you know, we got to, it's hard to find an hour every day to do stuff. You know, you might be living in an apartment and you've got neighbors and things, and you're worried about bothering people and all that. I always tell people, you know, try to at least set aside 3 to 4 days a week where you can kind of do 45 minutes to an hour of rehearsing, and all the other time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes here or there, wherever you can get it. I tell a lot of students the best place to practice is when you're taking your shower for the day. You've got the hot steam, right? Really good for opening and unclogging, right? It's really good for your vocal cords. You're in an enclosed space with all that tile and stuff, so you got really good resonance. And you close the door. It's your little private domain. Nobody bothers you. And it's not really an uncommon, strange thing to hear somebody singing in the shower.
So good.
So it's a great place to vocalize. You're basically multitasking. You're cleaning and you're vocalizing at the same time. You got that 10 minutes. You don't need scales, but you're not doing like, you know, you don't need to do that. I tell people just do the slides, you know, things like that while you're soaping up and shampooing, you know, so you don't really need a lot of concentration. You just kind of do these big circles and sirens and stuff just to stretch you out. You know, try that and do wherever you can. I tell people a lot of times also, do your breathing exercises, the long hisses and things like that, wherever and as often as you can all day long.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to tire your voice out. You're just breathing.
That's really interesting. Do you want to show like maybe some of your favorite vocal warm-ups or vocal practices, or like
sure.
breathing exercises?
Yeah, in terms of the breath support stuff, my 2 favorite ones are just basically long hisses, just that kind of stuff. And living here in New York City, it's kind of easy to do that anywhere and everywhere because that's the least crazy thing you'll see somebody doing. You know, on the street or in the subway, you know, someone going that's the least crazy thing you'll see. So, and you know, when it's noisy here and stuff, so no one's really going to hear you when you do it. So, you know, do those as often as you can, you know, for as long as you can. Try to time yourself, you know, 45 seconds to 60 seconds of hissing. Warm-ups for me are also the big sirens like that. The whoa things, either going up or you start top down like a yawn. This is really good at just getting the vocal cords to kind of wake up and stretch. And then the warm-ups, I basically start very soft, very light, almost a speech level kind of thing, you know, very small, very not a lot of taxing, because all I want to do is just kind of get it warmed up. And then as I go on with the warm-up, I whoa, 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 I start to open the sound up. Yeah, 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 until I'm at a full, big, open sound. Basically, how I'm going to sing that night. If it's a light gig, you know, I don't need to do gigantic, huge sounds. Warm up to where kind of what I need for that particular show. You know, when I'm vocalizing every day, I do the full-on warm-up.
Yeah. And how long do you do a warm-up for before like a show?
It depends. I get this question asked a lot. How much you need to warm up on a particular day depends on your voice. Your voice is different each day. Some days I wake up and my voice is just ready to go, and it's like 10 minutes and boom, it's there. And sometimes it's almost an hour, you know, where it really needs to kind of get into that full-on mode that I need to kind of do the high belts or the high screamy stuff, it can sometimes take an hour. But I would say minimum try to do 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and then lay off.
Yeah.
And then go and do your main vocalizing. Take a little break, go get a drink, maybe eat a little bit, then go do your main vocalizing. Because you want to let the voice just stretch out a little bit, then let it kind of settle, and then do the full-on vocalizing session.
Cool, thank you so much. I'm not going to hold you for longer now. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining in on Awesound TV. It's been really amazing having you here and just having you sharing your amazing knowledge.
Well, thank you very much. It was great doing this. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. I hope we can do this again. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, Peter.
I hope to see you next week again. And thank you, Kevin. Bye for now.
So long.